We are talking The Hunt for Vlad the Impaler, also known in the States as simply Vlad the Impaler, but its original title is called Deliler. And this is actually a Turkish movie directed by Ottoman Empire. Now, Deliler is a team of, I guess you want to say, 15th century elite military unit of the Ottoman Empire. Almost like a special forces type small little unit of warriors that in the movie are sent to try and take out Vlad the Impaler, who is in this movie depicted as the kind of the bad guy. He is obviously a tyrant and literally described as evil in the movie. And he has been, you know, causing trouble for the Ottoman Empire. And we have a small team of 7 warriors sent to try and track him down. So let's look at a little bit of historical context first of all. This film is from the point of view of the Turkish Ottomans. There was actually another movie some years ago now called Dark Prince, Legends of Dracula, that was again a medieval kind of movie, but this one from the point of view of the Romanian side, the Wallachian side. So obviously this is going to be biased one way, so let's talk a little bit more about the plot. But there are some historical things within this movie. I think the casting of the guy who plays Vlad the Impaler looks a lot like the original paintings that you've seen of Vlad the Impaler. But I've got to say, the actual film itself is, you know, embellishes some historical facts, shall we say. For example, the Vlad Tepes's main kind of ultimate goal here is to create a bioweapon using plague-filled rats, which as far as I know was not something he actually did. So there are some kind of embellishments within this movie. It's not a historical document. It is an entertainment movie with some, you know, references to real historical things. There are some stuff which is correct. For example, the first atrocity that we see Vlad the Impaler do is nail a Turkish messenger's turban to his head, which is actually a documented thing that he did. The messenger came in and the messenger wouldn't take his turban off. So Vlad the Impaler nailed it to his head, and that is documented that actually happened. And the guy that they've got to play Vlad the Impaler, I have to say, looks pretty good, pretty much like the paintings that you would have seen of the real kind of Vlad Tepes. But the film is from the point of view of the Deliler, these 7 warriors, all who have kind of got their individual quirk. Our kind of leader looks a little bit like kind of Rob Zombie, and he wears these kind of like these wings on his armour. We've got like a new guy who's like the rookie who doesn't have a name. We've got a guy who keeps his eyes shut in the daylight. We've got a guy who doesn't speak. We've got a guy who's kind of always joking. So each of these kind of 7 warriors all have their kind of individual personalities, really, so we can kind of tell them apart. And they obviously are going in to kind of try and find out what Vlad is up to and take him out if possible. Along the way, there are complications you'd probably expect. We actually don't see a huge amount of Vlad the Impaler, to be honest with you. Like I said, this movie is from the Deliler's point of view, and they take up, I would say, 80% of the running time here, with Vlad the Impaler only really popping up here and there. So let's talk about, first of all, what works with this movie. So it is certainly lavish to look at. This movie has got a great production value. It is actually a Turkish movie coming out in 2018 and is spoken in Turkish, but you can either watch it in obviously subtitles or dubbed. But the actual production design here is really impressive, and I've seen on the cover of the the DVD that I've got, it says here, Game of Thrones meets Vikings. I would say less Game of Thrones, maybe Vikings, but it certainly does have some really good cinematography. There's some real beautiful kind of like shots of kind of the landscapes, aerial shots, you know, castles, things like this. Desolate kind of wastelands, woodlands, all looks great. The makeup, hair, and costuming is fantastic. These guys look badass. They're all very individual looking Delilers, and as I've mentioned, the guy who plays Vlad Tepes, again, they got really kind of looks the spot. If that makes sense, he kind of does look a lot like the original paintings and things. The action, there's not that much, if I'm honest. But when we do have it, I think it's well choreographed, and we do have some pretty decent kind of battles here. We do get to know our characters. You could argue maybe this movie is a little bit like the Magnificent Seven, Seven Samurai, that sort of thing. But they're not really hired by the a poor village. They're hired by the Ottoman Empire, basically, which is not no small deal here. The acting is a little bit hard to tell, to be honest, because obviously when you're watching a foreign language movie, it's hard to really judge. I actually watched it dubbed and then kind of watched some of it subbed to see what it was like. And some of it's okay, but I've got to say the actual dub isn't great, to be honest with you. If you can watch it subtitled, then you probably get a bit more of a natural feel to it. But even there's some little hammy acting here and there. Okay, maybe what doesn't work here, this isn't a historically accurate movie. Let's just get that out of the way. Vlad Tepes' main plan is to create a bioweapon using plague-filled rats, which as far as I know is not something that he actually did. So there is that. But there are obviously a lot of things that are missing here. Vlad's brother Radu is mentioned, but we never really see him, but he kind of played a big part in the kind of obviously the real events here and things like that. And Vlad the Impaler in his native Romania was actually regarded by at least some to be a hero, because he did keep the country safe for a time. And one of the things I found the most perplexing really was the whole thing with Vlad the Impaler is he impaled the people on stakes to try and scare off the Ottoman Empire, and it worked in history. This kind of like it really kind of put halt to the Ottoman invasion, and that isn't in the movie. We do see some kind of impaled corpses leading up to the castle, but that's kind of not what they were there for. They were there at the kind of borders where the Ottomans would come in and kind of like, oh, geez, I don't want to kind of invade this. What's going on here? And that's what happened. But it's a thing that it's one of he's Vlad the Impaler's big thing. Anyway, so there are some things that I thought would have been in the movie, but aren't. Like I said, it's not really Vlad's movie. It's the Delilers' movie. Some of these guys, they're acting like, I think it's partly the directing as well. For example, when they'll like stop fighting someone, they'll almost like strike a pose, and it looks like a fighting game almost. It's like, this is a little bit silly, it's just a little bit silly at times. And it's very biased to one way, I have to say. This is not an even-handed movie in regards to... I guess you would maybe that's what you'd expect. It makes you think, doesn't it? When you're watching these films, you look at Star Wars, you could say going off on a tangent now, but when you watch the original Star Wars movie, the rebels, you could also call them terrorists against the government, but it's just a different way of looking at it, if you see what I mean. So the Imperials could be classed as the government, and the rebels could be classed as terrorists. And it's just how we view them, if that makes sense. So to us, the rebels are the heroes, but to someone for the government, they'd be terrorists. So it's maybe the same thing here. Like I said, there's a lot of sitting around talking about like posturing and things like this. It's a little bit kind of like macho at times. And there are some plot points that just don't really make some sense here. But I've got to say, it's visually speaking, at least, a very attractive movie. And there's a real attention to detail in regards to just the kind of like the muck that these kind of soldiers get on them, and the kind of like the griminess that is ingrained here. And you do get a real sense of brotherhood between our 7 warriors here. And they do seem legitimately badass. And we do get some kind of fun fight scenes. I will say maybe the final confrontation is a little bit underwhelming at times. A couple of our Deliler get their bosses. A couple of Vlad's lieutenants that are kind of like, you know, characters themselves. But the actual showdown with Vlad himself was a little bit underwhelming, I've got to say. And again, we are talking just really a historical fantasy here. I guess you could watch this in tandem with the older movie, The Dark Prince, Legend of Dracula, to almost get two sides of the story here. But obviously, this is really just taking excerpts of history and kind of making it an entertainment-based movie rather than a historical documentary. So just bear that in mind. However, it's a wonderfully shot film. I still actually had quite a lot of fun with it, and I'm actually a big fan of the historical Vlad the Impaler. I've read quite an in-depth historical text all about him and stuff like that. So you know, it's a fascinating story, actually, even more so than the actual Bram Stoker books in a way. So this movie, worth a watch if you like your historical fantasy movies. I don't think it really stands the test of time as a great story, and it's a little hammy at times, but it certainly looks good. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.